Hi, folks. Thanks for continuing to view our conversation with Charlie Ryan. Charlie, you mentioned Bobby Kennedy just a few moments ago, and about how you wrote to him, urging him to come back to Massachusetts. Obviously, you must have had some sort of relationship with him, and I suspected that you had, to varying degrees, relationships with President Kennedy, with Senator Ted Kennedy, and Senator Bobby Kennedy. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the Kennedy family?
Oh, sure. Well, I only met Jack Kennedy a couple of times. I was a young guy. He wasn't president. He was running for senator at the time. And I certainly, he was, I admired him, intrigued by him. Bobby, I knew. And again, I can tell you how I felt, that I knew he had a lot of kids. I knew I had a lot of kids. And so that kind of became the common chord. And then, of course, there was, with his significant number of kids, then people, would say, you like the Kennedys and all that sort of stuff. So, and as I say, I would have given anything to see him live out his life. I think, if I've used the word tumultuous, I think his presidency would have been tumultuous. I think it would have been groundbreaking. I think he would have been trying to do things that no American president has tried to do in social welfare and in the assimilation of different ethnic groups, different color groups, different racial groups. I think that by the time just before his assassination, that he had crossed his own Rubicon and decided his brother Jack was very, very careful. Jack was a very cautious man, much more so than Bobby had become. That's the big thing. There was clearly a profound change in him in that campaign. At that time, he was then running against Senator McCarthy, Gene McCarthy from Minnesota, and but I think he was going to win. I think he was going to win that nomination. I think he would have beaten Richard Nixon, and we would have been on a ride that I don't think anybody could predict, because we'd never had it happen before. Most presidents are cautious. It's the nature of the beast. And then so far as Teddy is concerned, I knew Teddy very well. I knew him because he was the senator from Massachusetts while I was mayor, and I was the mayor of the city, and I knew him very well, and through all these years, yeah.
Do you think that Senator Ted Kennedy was? I know that there was always talk about him running for the presidency.
Yeah, well, he did.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that was something that haunted him, that he wasn't able to achieve that goal?
No, I don't. I mean, how do I know? Good question. But no.
Don't know if he ever told you.
I mean, I think when you're in political life, you got to be a little bit fatalistic. The question is, can I run without making a darn fool out of myself? Because you know that.
Is that what crossed your path? Well, crossed your mind a couple times?
Sure. If you've got something you want to say, and the only way you feel you can achieve it is by having the stamp saying that you're whoever, then you got to pay the price, and the price is it's not guaranteed. Right. And you may win, which is delicious. You may lose, which is very, not happy. But you got to go through it. So no, I don't think that there was any profound change in him because of losing that Jimmy Carter situation. He wrote a biography not long before he died, big fat book, and I'm a great reader. I read and read and read and read, and it was a good book. I think he was reasonably candid on most of what he said, and I think that in latter years, again, with, let's say, the last 5 or 7 years of his life, when he was still active, I think that those were happy years for him. I think that he had, a few years before that, it was not pretty. He wasn't doing well. He wasn't acting well, and I think that he kind of matured, and I think those were good years for him, and so people who admire him and who want to think good things about him, they think of that part of his stewardship. And it's not necessary to be president to, make a real impact. The thing that bothers me today is I look at both sides, and I don't see any impact players anymore. I just see the moderates have been driven off the field. They've allowed themselves to be driven off the field because of the fact that they fear rejection more than anything else, whereas nobody can save us except moderates who will compromise. Nobody, because we are not a left-wing country and we are not a right-wing country. We're a country where everything is important, and you take it and you roll it around, but if you and I want to do something together, you've got to change a little bit, and I got to change a little bit. It's as simple as that, and I think those were good. I think those were happy years for him and effective years for him, and I think that's a nice way to remember him.
Let me just ask you something about something you just said. Many people have told me that being a mayor is the hardest job in politics because it's a 24/7 job.
Right.
People can call you at your home and complain.
There's no place to hide.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've also found that mayors tend to be pragmatists.
They tend to be what?
Pragmatists. They tend to be practical about matters.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
not. They're
You have
not
to be.
ideologues. They're not waving a flag
You have
of
to
one
be.
particular group.
Yeah.
So, do you find that to be effective as a mayor, then walking down that middle path, being more of a moderate and listening to various sides is the way that you get the job done?
I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, I would go absolutely whack. I wouldn't try and be in government if I had to stay on an ideological path. I think it's terrible, and somebody sooner or later got to have the guts to not only say that but act that way. For crying out loud, I mean, it's a joke. I mean, you take an issue, not only do you know ahead of time before they take the vote, as to just how everybody will vote, depending on whether they're a Democrat or Republican. The same damn thing now has gotten to the Supreme Court. You can tell before the Supreme Court votes, almost dead on, who's going to vote yes, who's going to vote no. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. Or the worst thing is, that if the president took a different position, the people who were so much against it would. I mean, I think that James Comey, my golly, the Democrats were wild, the Republicans were wild. It depends which way Comey goes, and you don't know whether it's. It's so bad. It is. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed at how bad it is. And when you want to go to Congress, you want to go to the Senate, you want to become president, I mean, I would think you'd want to do that so that you could be a participant in positive change. I mean, why do we go through trying to change something as complex as a health thing, that the Democrats kept every Republican away, and now the Republicans are trying to keep every Democrat away, when you know that if you had something where there were hearings and you went forward, they would make it better. Oh my God, this is too darn important to mess it up with ideology. And so, yes, a couple of my, I didn't go around the country and get to know a lot of mayors because I felt that I could do more for the city being here working. But I became very friendly over the years with John Collins of Boston and then with Kevin White of Boston. And I enjoyed their company and companionship and their views on everything. But we all, we didn't give a darn whether it was a Republican house we were affecting or a Democratic house. It was a house that needed some assistance or a person in that house that needed some assistance. And that was the challenge that we all loved. So I think you read it right. And for some reason, that has never gotten into the legislative branches. And these guys are willing and content to stand there and just say, yes, Mr. Speaker, no, Mr. Speaker, yes, Mr. President, no, Mr. President, without ever once jumping ship, because when you jump ship, then the discipline kicks in and it means that, you're a bad guy and we don't talk to you anymore. That's not what it's all about.
Right.
And I don't know, I know when I was a younger man and I would look at Congress, I would see people on both sides of the aisle that I admired. Oh, that guy's a real guy. Or, boy, I don't give a darn whether he's a Republican or not. Gee, I like him, or vice versa. And I don't see that happening anymore. There's nobody saying anything. And yet everybody knows something's got to break, and I don't know. It's pathetic.
Right.
It's just pathetic.
I like your thoughts on that. Let me just turn to something that is on everyone's mind almost every day here in Springfield, which is the redevelopment of downtown.
Sure.
We're sitting in a building that, in fact, you remarked to me that this corner had been a number of pharmacies over the years.
Yes.
We're sitting in this building, which is an office building, and if we burst through that wall a couple times, because there's more of Focus Springfield behind there, we're going to hit MGM. Downtown is changing. Downtown has changed. And you, after you were mayor, you were involved with Springfield Central, which was basically an economic development agency.
Right.
That was pinpointing downtown. When Charlie ran for mayor in 1995, he actually came up with a book.
Did you say 85?
95.
95, yeah.
He came up with a book, and in this book is his positions on almost everything, which is pretty radical. And it's radical on two counts, because most of the time when politicians write a book, they want to make money off of it, as we've just seen with Senator Clinton. And most of the time when you're running for office, the last thing you want is a document that says, I want to do this, this, and this, and I'm not going to do this, this, and that.
That's right.
Because most of the time, most politicians like a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Charlie, being not like most politicians, didn't give himself much wiggle room here. I'm turning to a section called Downtown and Riverfront Development. Okay, so folks, this is from 1995, but this talks about his efforts to do downtown and riverfront development. And I just want to read a little of what was accomplished, that you accomplished as a leader of Springfield Central. That there was a new Bank of Boston building. Now, folks, remember there was actually local banks back in the day, something we don't have much of anymore. The new Bank of Boston building, which is now the Mass Live building.
Yes.
Evan Plotkin's building.
Yes.
That's the only time you'll ever hear me refer to it as a Mass Live building.
Right.
The new SIS Retail Office Center. Now, that's the bank building that is across from Tower Square.
Right.
New Monarch Place and Sheraton Hotel, the total renovation of Symphony Hall, the Basketball Hall of Fame moving to the riverfront, and that was the second iteration of the Basketball Hall of Fame. Channel 57 moving to downtown, because originally it was part of Stick. Wasn't it part of Stick, Channel 57?
I don't know, but they were going to put it in Amherst or someplace, and
So
I
you
can
got
remember that little fight, and I said, my God, for crying out loud. You can't get that in Springfield? So we got it in Springfield, which is where it should be.
Stage West moving to downtown. Stage West was originally
It was over in
at the Big E
Eastern
grounds.
States, yeah.
And of course, that's where City Stage is now. The new federal office building, which of course is no longer the new federal office building, that is the 1550 Main Street where the school department is.
Yeah.
New parking garages under Route 91, which is of course where my car right now is. Morgan Square Housing and Parking Garage, Worthy Hotel Housing, Stockbridge Court Housing, Armory Commons Housing, new streets, sidewalks and lighting, many new restaurants. When I read this, Charlie, I realized what Springfield Central had done, which was to create an imprint, much of which lasts to today. Yes, the bank buildings are different names,
Sure.
but a lot of this happened under your tenure.
Sure.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of deal making.
Yes.
How difficult was this for you to accomplish this?
You know, it was harder than getting Stick, right? Which I said was just, you ask the guys and I got to kill you with kindness and you're off and running. But doable and not impossible. Again, we got an awful lot of help from across the board. And so there's a lot of people who not only made positive decisions, but were in many cases those who were advocating to their friends that they make a positive decision. In other words, you can't do it. It's not a one-man show. It's something where where the effort's got to be made. You've got to be. There's got to be a basic integrity. Doesn't mean no stealing money. I'm not even talking of that kind of integrity. I'm talking about that when you're trying to sell something, you've got to try and make sure that the whole package makes sense, that you haven't sold a good guy who's relying on your honor a can of worms. Right. That this is going to backfire on him because you outsmarted him. That wasn't it. So there was it was a great effort. And Carlo Marchetti, he was the day-to-day guy. He was a great guy. David Starr was very, very active and very wonderful. Evan Plotkin's father, Sam Plotkin, was huge. Gordy Oaks, a lot of wonderful guys. And Jack Benoit was great. Jim Martin, one time we had Jim Martin as a card-carrying member of our little group. We'd meet on a loft over on Worthington Street, and the president of Mass Mutual would come up in the freight elevator, and my wife made pillows for everybody. We had a lot of fun, but it was something you wanted to go to be at, to be with people that you respected and saw the working together. That great things happen. I always said that if you can get beyond who's trying to get credit for doing it, it's amazing what you can get done. You know, but when somebody say, oh, you know, boy, they're going to build this, they're going to build that, or I want to get my name on it, or I want people to think that was my. Once you get beyond that foolish vanity, you can get, and once people understand that those are the ground rules, that's the way you do act, rather than like a poor man's Donald Trump or something. It's just that's what you're striving for. That, you know, somehow Belichick has found out how do you get all these guys, you know, and they change so quickly, but, you know, coming off the same playbook, and, you know, whether it's do your job or whatever, there's a mystique in it. Once you're doing it, and if you do it with good people, you have the same goal, and you share the same feeling of happiness when you succeed, and rejection is something, again, that's shared. So it's all just part of getting people to work together.
What fascinates me about that list is the amount of stuff that you were able to accomplish with Springfield Central. But also what fascinates me about that list is how much stuff we still need to do downtown, and how downtown has changed. This was something that that came out, which was Time for Springfield. And what's fascinating to me about this publication, which detailed a lot of the Springfield Central plans, much less accomplishments, when I looked through it, is the advertisements for businesses downtown that no longer exist, and people continually talk about them. Okay, so I know Steve will cut this in professionally, but I'm just showing this for the time being here. Here's an ad for Steigers. You have to explain to people today, to these young people, what the heck Steigers was. And we had this huge department store downtown called Steigers. Across from street from it was another huge department store called Forbes and Wallace. Downtown had a different meaning to people.
No question.
Even when you were
yes.
when you were coming up as a young man, it had a different meaning to you then than when you were with Springfield Central, and now it has a different meaning. It's almost like a moving target in terms of downtown development. We all talk about the riverfront. We need to do something with the riverfront. And when I was doing my postcard history book of Springfield, I found from 1922 documents and plans for a beautiful Greek-inspired roadway that would go from in front of City Hall down to the river.
Absolutely, I've seen it.
Okay, so you're familiar. We've been talking about the riverfront since before you were born, for goodness sakes, and we still don't have a solution.
No.
And some of these things seem so difficult to accomplish. When you take a look at downtown now, do you feel good about what's happening? Do you say, well, gee, there's still a lot of work to be done?
Oh, I'd say the second. There's still a lot of work to be done. I wouldn't say I feel good. I feel, well, it could be a hell of a lot better. That's what I say.
A lot of people talk now that the key to downtown development is making downtown a neighborhood again, where people live.
Yeah.
And Silver Brick Lofts, which has taken over a lot of the housing that you guys developed, has had an incredible revival, and they're doing very well. When you were working with Springfield Central, did you see Springfield as a neighborhood? Was that something that you'd hoped to accomplish? Downtown Springfield as a neighborhood, I should say?
Well, we thought a case could be made for it, and it was worth the effort.
Because you did a number of housing projects. You did a number of housing projects as part of this.
Oh, yes, yes. And a lot of effort went into those things. But it's not in the same way that go to Boston. They're in Boston. They're very, very expensive residences, are they not? Not all of them.
But they're very in demand, too, yes.
Yes, and so to me, it's a goal. I think it's a difficult goal, but I don't think you stop either. I can remember when, you talk of Steigers and Forbes and Wallace. And they were a great part of our lives. I mean, it was fantastic. And when I look at it now and I see downtown doesn't have either one or anything even faintly resembling it, I feel very badly. because I know the sense of excitement and elan and everything that it brought. And, you know, hey, we're Springfield. We're not Times Square. We are what we are. But that was special. And when Holyoke Mall started, yeah, that was really in the times we're talking about there, you know, we were, you know, can we survive? Well, the answer was given by the people. The people said, look, that's free parking, and it's no hassle, and a lot of different stores, variety and everything like that. We could not provide all of that, and so the death of, well, G. Fox's in Hartford, same story, and our two department stores probably was inevitable, but it doesn't make it any easier to accept the results. Too bad.
As long as we're talking about downtown,
Yeah.
I was going to wait on this, but no, I'm going to skip forward here. All right. In 1995, you ran for mayor again.
Yeah.
You ran against Mike Albano, and at that time, there was a referendum question on the ballot
Yeah.
concerning whether or not Springfield wanted casino gaming.
Right. That was the second year in a row.
Right.
It was on in '94 also.
And the interesting thing is that the legislature was nowhere near the idea of accepting casino gaming at that time. And this was an effort, I think, to act as a spark plug to try to get this discussion moving. You ran on an anti-casino platform.
Absolutely.
That was part of your platform was,
Yes.
I don't want it, it's not good.
Yeah.
Albano was for it. And the irony of the situation is Albano became mayor, but that anti-gaming platform, referendum question passed. So I know you don't like it, but I've got to ask you what you think about the complex that's through the wall over here and has taken up 3 whole city blocks.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many acres.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to attract 10,000 people a day
Yeah.
to Springfield.
Yeah.
How do you feel about MGM Springfield?
Well, if I were the decision maker, I'd stay where I was. What worries me, first of all, I think it's glitzy. Those who like that, well, good, they probably are happy. But what I see is, and what I saw at that time, is a city that has a lot of poor people, a lot of very, very vulnerable people. By vulnerable, I mean that if you've got 2 weeks' pay somewhere in an envelope, you're doing pretty good. There are a lot of people that don't have anything. And what I worry about is planting in their downtown, in their city, very close to the place where many of them live. This seductive thing where come on in, everybody's happy, food is cheaper, etc., and they're coming in and they've got nothing to bet with, and so inevitably, you know, the house always wins. We know that. Well, if you got a well-to-do person, I don't care how much money they lose. They want to spend their money that way, that's great. But about the people who are not well-to-do, and we've got more than our fair share, and to leave them subject to the desire to fun and laugh and all that sort of stuff, I just think there's going to be an awful lot of sad things happen. And that's not my view of what government should be trying to do. The only reason we have this is that government, in its desire to get money without going through the tax process, has decided that they will legalize what was always criminal. This was always criminal. When the mob would do it, my golly, you know, the whistles would blow and they'd arrest everybody and take credit for it on the front page. Now what the state has said and what the cities are saying is that as long as I get my piece of the action, you can do whatever the hell you want. And my view of government is that it's a higher calling than that. My God, for crying out loud. I think when something positive happens that brings in jobs or enhances education, or let's say stick as that's a home run. That's a home run. Everybody wins because it's going to better everybody. The new library we're talking about putting up in East Forest, that's a home run. I mean, that's going to be there for 100, 125 years. That's a goodie for everybody. And that's what government should be doing. But to take things that were so bad that for a couple of hundred years they were criminal, and then saying, oh, what the hell? Well, we'll be more broad-minded than that. We'll do that. Yeah, you can do it. But of course, you can't do it unless you get our license. And our license is you got to pay X percentage of dollars to the state, which will give to the city. Or now Springfield's a host city, so it's going to get $20-odd million a year. And isn't that fantastic? Oh, it is. I don't believe in selling my soul. And that's what I think is happening all over America, is that our souls are being sold, and nobody's really worrying much about it. What do we represent anymore? What do we stand for? When we say we're a city, we're a community, what does that mean? Is it at the best that we have fun and frolic and everybody's half loaded and that a lot of new homeless people? I went with Ann Geer, who was a wonderful woman and who was co-chairman with me in '94 and '95 against the casinos. And she was a Protestant minister, and her husband John was also. And nobody else was ready to take on Steve Wynn, etc., let alone the Springfield newspapers. But we did, and among other things, we went down to Atlantic City. And Atlantic City today is kind of a joke. I mean, there's nobody there anymore, but 20-odd years ago, there was casinos coming out your ears. And we went down there, stayed overnight, and I said, before we were leaving to drive back to Springfield, the four of us, my wife and Ann and her husband, myself, is I said, somebody told me Atlantic City has a new fantastic downtown central library. And I said, and they say that the homeless have taken it over. I said, let's just find it and go in and see it, which is exactly what we did. And we went in, and this was state of the art. I don't know what it cost, but it was any community would be proud to have it. I went in there, and there were several hundred indigent men and women. They had nothing. They had slept there all night. They would sleep there all day. And this is in the casino capital of the world. These were people who came to Atlantic City with money. They're cleaned out now. They don't have bus fare back home. That's good government. And that's what people don't even want to think about. What do we want out of government? What do we want out of our state reps or our congressmen or our mayors or our governors? Somebody's got to act with responsibility and with a vision of what government should do, what a city should be. And so if you can bring in real new business where something is being made, or real new cultural activities or something like that, that it's a better city, a better community, I say, hey, I want to get on that team. But to just do it so that it is predictable, it is probable, it is probably a sure thing that within a year or two of the time this is open, there are going to be a lot of men and women and the vulnerable children that they have, with nothing. And who's going to take care of them? I don't know who's going to take care of them. Not all the big spenders. They've gone home to their happy home. They've had their fun. And, it's no longer is it in a resort thing or out in the country, like Foxwoods. Hey, get it downtown. Get it downtown. Well, you're going to change the character here. I don't think it's going to be a change for the better, in spite of the fact that, yes, for a time, there will be some men and women who have jobs working there, and I wish them well. But it's not a goal I ever could make for my own. And rather than make that my goal, I just get out, because I don't want to be a part of that. That's not my idea of what we're building for. And you know, and the funny part of here, which was written at the same time this was happening, I write in here that at that time, Donald Trump, what is this? How many years ago? 22 years ago? 22 years ago, Donald Trump, and I've got it in here, is saying how disastrous it would be. He, the king of the casinos, how disastrous it would be to have a casino in New York City. It would ruin New York. We can't tolerate it. We can't digest it. Well, God, if they can't digest a casino, what makes you think we can digest a casino? Because there's going to be an awful lot of harm done by men and women who have nobody to talk for them. They have no money to give to politicians to have them understand. And that's why, you know, I mean, it's funny that Bernie Sanders, how do I get on Bernie Sanders? I get on Bernie Sanders because of the fact that, well, I maybe wouldn't agree with everything he does. I felt that Bernie Sanders was the most honorable, honest voice of integrity that I can remember running on a national ticket in my adult lifetime. That, you know, he was right to say that it was wrong to go to Wall Street and to take incredible amounts of money for nothing, I mean, you know, you play that game, maybe your bank account loves it, and maybe there's somebody in the family who knows he'll inherit a lot of money, but that isn't what John Kennedy was talking about when he says, you know, what can I do for my country? Not what can I do for myself? How can I get more money? But somewhere there's a call to greatness. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody playing that bugle in either party today. There is no call to greatness. There's a call to let it all hang out, do what you want, and if people get hurt, hey, that's their problem. That's not my problem. Pretty sad.
The political climate of this country, the political climate of Massachusetts and Springfield has changed a great deal since you entered politics.
Well, very much so.
And I do find it fascinating that not so long ago, in 1994 and 1995, people rejected the idea of casino gaming, but now many people embraced it and embrace it as somehow being, myself, the two things that I really like in terms of economic development was, number one, Union Station being revived, and number two, the Chinese rail car company, because they're bringing manufacturing back. And one hopes that if they're successful, that maybe we'll see a real benefit. I know that everybody I've talked to says if the Chinese use local precision manufacturing shops in the region as their subcontractors for various things, that we will see this very valuable influx of jobs and of capital to stay in Massachusetts.
I'm all for it.
With Union Station, we've got this not only a building that's beautiful, but now a very functional intermodal transportation center. Let's just touch briefly, because you've touched on it, about East-West Rail, because now we've got this situation where we're seeing that Amtrak is increasing its north-south capacities through Union Station. Come next May, we'll have the commuter rail from Hartford, which means I can go to downtown Hartford without having to drive there. I can stay on that train and go to New Haven, get a new train, and go to New York City if I want. I like trains. I use them all the time. This is all good news to me, and it's also what I see as economic development potential. But that missing piece is the east-west rail. Now, you mentioned earlier in the interview about getting on a train and going to Boston. We really don't have that capacity. We can drive to Worcester and get on a train, but that's where we have to go.
And we should have that capacity. I'm glad you brought it up, because to me, that's a crystal clear example of what we can do. That funny money, that's something that's so logical, it's painful, that I was reading in the Boston Globe a week ago. They had pictures on the front page of very, very nondescript houses, and saying that this is the new $1 million house in Boston. In other words, nondescript, and yet it's $1 million. My golly, I mean, so the real, what you think is $1 million house is really 3, 4, or 5. So you've got a city, Boston, which is, an economic giant, creating a lot of new jobs. And Springfield region, Western Mass, is not that same economic climate, unfortunately. Efforts are continually being made to improve it, but it's a long, hard slog. I would hope, and I admire our present governor, Charlie Baker. I think he's a good man. I really do. I've seen a lot come and go, and I think he makes a lot of sense. But I really wish that he would listen to our state senator, Mr. Zeller, who is advocating this east-west railroad, because I think if you want one economic thing that could happen here to make a real difference in the lives of the people, it would be regular transportation by rail to downtown Boston. They need our housing. We need their jobs. If we could be an hour away rather than, oh my God, I don't know when I'm going to get to Boston again, I think it'd be a home run. I think it'd be fantastic. And it's a real laudable goal. And to me, that's something with the signature on a piece of paper that you could be there. That's really something. And then I'd say that's what government's all about. But this is an opportunity. And I can remember as a younger person, I loved trains. God, I was all over the country in trains. Trains were a part of my life. And then when they died, and especially in Union Station, Springfield, very, very sad. That vacuum has never been filled. And the PVTA is not going to fill that vacuum. It's got to be trains on the upper level. Now, north and south is one thing, but the real travel and the place where it fits like a glove is we have what Boston lacks, they have what we lack. It's 90 miles apart. It's no big deal. Stop building tunnels in downtown Boston. Do something around the west of the state. And by the way, it's not just it's not just Springfield. It's the whole darn region out here. This is if you take Massachusetts and look at it, it's the envy of the United States. But economically, Western Mass isn't the envy of the United States. We're making it. We're doing all right. A lot of good work being done. But to look and to see that, hey, we could put in trains with the positive effect it just normally is going to have, back and forth, 12 trains a day to Boston and back, then you've got real change and real excitement and real jobs and real positive change.
Indeed.
I think.
Charlie, I want to stop right here.
Okay.
We're going to have you back because I want to talk to you all about your second go as mayor, particularly how you were able to so carefully negotiate and walk a tightrope between fulfilling the obligations as mayor and satisfying the Finance Control Board and satisfying the state, which you did an incredible job of. And all of us here, we have to remember that you inherited a mess and you did a great job. But I want to talk about that in depth with our next interview.
Be glad to.
And thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Because this has been an absolute treat. I really appreciate it.
Okay, great.
Folks, thanks very much for watching. And we're going to be back with a second half of this interview with Charlie Ryan. Thanks very much.